What is going on, Hive Warriors? So we have another video of a person telling you don't do intermittent fasting because of X and Y. Now today, the reason why they're pointing the finger at you and telling you not to do intermittent fasting is because of IBS. Now, IBS stands for Irritable Bowel Syndrome, which is consistent abdominal pain, chronic abdominal pain, chronic diarrhea, chronic indigestion, gas, things like that. Basically stomach issues, which is IBS. But let's see what she says about it. And then let's quickly talk about it. Just quickly.
Quick example of why I will never, ever,
Let me just make sure you guys can hear what she's saying. Okay, you guys can hear.
ever recommend intermittent fasting if you have
Never, ever, ever, ever would she ever recommend intermittent fasting if you have IBS.
irritable bowel syndrome. Got really distracted this morning. Long story short, did not make my usual smoothie at 9 a.m. I made it at like 10:45 a.m. So late. I never eat breakfast that late. Didn't even know I was hungry. My hunger cues are a little bit different than normal hunger cues. So by the time I got around to eating my smoothie, I literally ate it in like 5 minutes. I was so hungry.
Okay, this is the typical fear monger of intermittent fasting, where people take the very early stages of doing intermittent fasting in the sense of the first day or the second day that they've ever done it and apply that to your entire process of intermittent fasting, your entire biological, physiological, psychological process of intermittent fasting before even getting to the point where your body becomes comfortable with intermittent fasting and you don't just become so ravishly hungry, right? This is the whole fear mongering. She's doing the slight insert jab subtly and by telling you, hey, look, man, because I didn't eat when I was supposed to, I was so hungry, so I just ate so fast and I could have even overeaten. It was so easy for me because I was so hungry. That's the fear monger. That is simply just not true. Do certain people feel hungry, or do most people feel hungry when you're first starting? Yes, but you're breaking a completely, you're breaking into a completely new form of eating. So there's this habit breaking situation that you have to go through. If you don't go through that, you're going to, if you just do the first day, that's the most ridiculous thing. Think about the first day you ever went to the gym and how horrible that felt. If you go to the gym consistently, think about when you first went. Try to remember. It feels horrible. It felt horrific. It felt like there's no way I could do this all the time, nonstop, consistently. Think about the first time you done cardio and you thought to yourself, how am I going to do this consistently all the time? It's impossible. But once you get into a flow, a rhythm, your body accepts the situation and it doesn't overcompensate as if you're doing it for the first time. So yeah, just I don't like when people say that, because they're just touching on the early stages when you're getting into intermittent fasting.
I am now so bloated, so uncomfortable, and I didn't get to go to the bathroom this morning because there's always a ritual. You eat breakfast, you go to the bathroom, and it starts the cyclical cycle of your day, which is so important if you have irritable bowel syndrome. So I know today will definitely not be a good day for me, but there's always tomorrow.
Okay, so clearly she doesn't want you to do intermittent fasting if you have IBS. And she's basing it off of her own personal experience, not studies, just her own personal experience. So you know how I know that she's not basing it off studies? Is that there's only been one study ever on IBS and fasting. Just one. Back in 2007 in Japan. And this is a study that has come out on that. Effects of fasting therapy on irritable bowel syndrome. The only study that exists to this day. This is the only study that exists on that. How to treat people with irritable bowel syndrome who do not respond to pharmacotherapy is an unsolved problem. So basically, who do not respond to actual like medicine that you're given for irritable bowel syndrome. So you know what they did? They broke groups into two, right? They got 58 people and they broke them into two groups. One did fasting therapy. Now, the fasting was 10 days. So it was basically a 10-day like starvation fasting period and then a 5-day refeeding period. And then they had a control group. And guess what the control group had? The control group had the normal pharmacological treatment that you would get for irritable bowel syndrome. So literally, the medicine that you would get for irritable bowel syndrome was given to the control group. The intervention group did the 10-day of fasting. Now, this isn't intermittent fasting, but it's much, much longer, right, than intermittent fasting. So what did they find? What happened? Well, the basic treatment consisted of pharmacotherapy and brief psychotherapy, whereas the FT, which is the fasting therapy, consisted of 10 days of starvation followed by 5 days of refeeding. Changes in the score of symptoms become before and after each treatment were analyzed. FT, fasting therapy, significantly improved 7 out of the 10 symptoms assessed. That is abdominal pain discomfort, abdominal distension, diarrhea, anorexia, the thing that gets feared more than anything when it comes to intermittent fasting. Look at those p-values, 0.001, 0.001, 0.02, all less than 0.05 to make it statistically significant. Nausea, anxiety, so psychological stuff too. Anorexia, which people always try to point the finger at intermittent fasting and say, hey, you're the one that you increase anorexia psychologically. But anorexia was improved dramatically with a p-value of 0.02 with fasting therapy, right? With a longer than just intermittent fasting. Anxiety and interference with life in general. However, the control therapy, so the people that were given the actual pharmacological treatment, therapy improved only 3 of the 10 symptoms assessed, which was abdominal pain discomfort, abdominal distension, and interference with life. But anorexia, nausea, anxiety, diarrhea was still present. Now, what makes somebody say, I don't recommend it for IBS, when there is no other study for IBS when it comes to fasting, other than this 10-day fast study that shows that the fasting that was even longer than what she had to deal with, which was just an additional hour or so before she ate, came off way better for the participants. Personal experience versus actual data, guys. Personal experience versus actual data. Now, could it be because we're all different? And notice how it says 7 out of the 10 symptoms, right? Not, all the symptoms. So we're all different. So maybe for her, fasting isn't good. And it does exacerbate some of the symptoms that she has with IBS. But that in no way means that you will also have the same problems she has when doing intermittent fasting, because that's simply not the way it works. Studies can get you closer to an understanding if it's possible that IBS would have problems doing something like intermittent fasting. But currently, we only have one study looking at fasting and IBS, and it isn't even intermittent fasting. It's 10-day fasting with IBS done in 2007 in Japan, and it shows that it blew the actual normal treatments out of the water. So there's no scientific leg to stand on to tell people don't do it if they have IBS. Science! All right, guys. Until the next one, I'll see you on Friday for another episode. right here on Fledge Fitness. Have a good one, guys. Thank you so much. Peace out.